From the Wildlife Haven Rehabilitation Center, we are joined by Dan Dywall and Shawna Hewson, and we'd like to introduce you to some of our friends that we've brought to the studio today. Dan, who's this on your arm?
This is Max. Max is a great horned owl. He's one of our non-releasable education ambassadors we have at the center. And he had been brought to us about 7 years ago that he had been found as a fledgling with some parasites in one of his ears that damaged his hearing. And because owls need their hearing for hunting, we deemed him non-releasable, so we've adopted him into our program.
Now, Dan, I think you talk about your program. Tell us about the program. I think a lot of us here in southeastern Manitoba didn't even know you existed. So, what is the Wildlife Haven? Where are you? What do you do?
Well, the Wildlife Haven is a non-profit charitable organization that's run mostly by volunteers, and this year we've been in existence for 30 years. And what we do is we look after injured and orphaned wildlife, as well as we have an education program that we go out and educate the people on coexisting with wildlife.
Wow. How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this personally now about 14 years, and I'm a volunteer, and we regularly go out and do events such as this and care for many, many animals, up to 1,500 animals a year at the center.
So I'm sure a lot of people have had that experience where they see something that they deem to be injured and in need of help. What's the best way to know if they need to bring an animal or wildlife in to see you guys?
Well, that's a good point. A lot of times we do get phone calls from people asking for advice on what they should do. We get a lot of what we call unnecessary orphans. People might come across a nest of baby bunnies and figure they're abandoned, but in reality they're not. They're being cared for just fine by their mom, but they just don't see her all the time. So our advice is simply give us a call at the center, and what we can do is advise them. If there's obvious injuries like blood or a broken wing or something like that, for sure put it into a box and then contact us to make arrangements. But if you're unsure about it, if it's a fledgling bird or just a young animal that may not need care, best to give us a call first.
Can we talk about this guy? I am assuming that hunting is done using those. He needs a pedicure and a manicure. Seriously?
Something needs to be done about those nails.
That is amazing.
You got a pedicure?
Last week.
Would it be a manicure or pedicure on an owl?
We'll say pedicure.
It's on the feet. Okay, pedicure. Last week.
Last week, yeah.
And how do you do that? Very carefully?
Cautiously.
Cautiously, yeah. We use what's called a Dremel, so it actually sands down the tip of the talons. And we do that because Max is no longer hunting in the wild, so for perching on our arm, he doesn't need to have those extra sharp talons, so we just dull them a little bit for handler safety.
I use a Dremel on my toenails too. So.
Or you should. Or you should. What's Max's future? What happens? Yeah.
What is his future? He'll probably live to be over 20 years with us, we hope.
And he'll stay with you?
He'll stay with us.
Okay.
He's not capable of hunting, but he's a very good ambassador for the center. So he comes out with me to schools almost every day, and he helps to teach kids about wildlife and how nice it is to learn about them up close.
Their heads can it almost looks like they can do the swivel 360 thing.
Yeah.
I know that's for vision and hunting, I would assume.
Yeah.
How many degrees does it actually turn?
It depends on what you read, but the general consensus is between 280 degrees to a full circle they can turn.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
He does yoga!
Yeah,
That's awesome. So you have more than just birds, of course, and you've brought them here.
Yeah.
I'm almost afraid to say you have a snake, but
Can't
Corny, are
wait to
you
open
going to
that
be the one to, or
Sure, I can take
You want to take
Shawna,
him out?
you should,
Okay.
Sure.
I think Karen wants to hold this one.
Okay.
Negative.
He's so friendly,
Oh, he's hiding.
Sweet.
How many varieties of snake would we have indigenous to Manitoba?
We have about 5 different species in Manitoba. This is probably
Any poisonous ones? That's the most important
Oh, that's
question.
a good question.
Yeah.
That's a trick question. We
I like
don't
the sounds
have
of that answer coming.
we don't have any poisonous snakes, but this one does have a toxic saliva. So their food primarily is toads. I should mention this is a western hognose snake. And so when they eat a toad, they actually chew a toxic saliva into the skin, and it paralyzes the toad, making it easier to swallow.
Oh.
So if it licks my hands, I should probably Not
won't
go and
affect
eat an
you.
apple right away?
It
Okay.
won't, well, do wash your hands.
Do wash my hands, okay, good idea. Guys need to be told that.
Yes.
Maybe want to wash your hands after touching any animals.
Can I hold it?
Yes, you can.
What's this snake's name?
His name is Bruce.
Bruce.
Bruce. How's it
Say
going,
hi to
Bruce?
Bruce?
Don't be smart.
I'm not saying that. Just wanted to know if it was a hi. Oh, look at this. Bruce is so gentle. He's so gentle.
Seriously?
Michelle?
You will
Send me
ruin the
Michelle.
day.
Now, hang on. I'm seeing some eyes over there. Should we be worried that suddenly this will look like lunch?
No.
No?
Max is really
Okay.
spoiled. He's used to getting his rats. He doesn't really care about snakes anymore.
He's well fed.
He's well fed, yeah.
Okay, Michelle, would you like
So,
to?
so how did, oh, that tongue is one of my,
There you go.
he's not slimy, but it's weird. Why did Bruce come to you guys?
Well,
Bruce just needed a place to stay.
I'm trying to sound all
And
like
the
I do
overseers
this all the
welcome.
time.
you're right. He needed a place to stay. He was surrendered to us from the pet trade. And
Squeezing my.
because these snakes are a species at risk here in Manitoba, it's illegal to take one out of the wild as a pet. So the people who had him realized they shouldn't have him. And they donated him
Okay.
to us for
Oh, okay.
education. We have a special permit to keep Bruce, otherwise we would not be able to have him.
Oh.
Is there a lot of that, like people who take on a pet, especially an exotic pet, and then all of a sudden they go, oh my word, I actually don't know how to take care of this. And
Yeah.
do a lot of those come to you, and what are some of the most exotic or interesting ones that have come?
Well, I'm used to having reptiles surrendered to me because I used to be a reptile owner. And we had been on the lookout for a hognose snake for our program for quite some time. We wanted to have some species at risk to talk about with kids and make them aware of what lives here in Manitoba. And we do get quite a few phone calls about people who have salamanders, these types of snakes. Even some people who have kept raptors, like the owls, as pets.
Yeah.
So Dan and our rehabilitation manager deal with that almost every day.
And with basically any of these animals, you need special licensing for.
That's right. You can't
Owls.
take an owl out of the wild for a pet.
You know, it's really interesting, not that I want to get any closer, but there is a good reason that this is called a hognose snake. It actually does have a snout, which you guys probably can't see, but it has almost like a pig's snout.
Yeah.
He does,
on
yeah.
his nose.
They're a burrowing.
And he just made a big mess on Michelle's shirt. Did he really? Right on your wrist? Or was that just breakfast?
That's just dirt.
That's
Oh,
Michelle's
it's just
breakfast.
dirt.
Okay, he's almost touched the snake this time. This is
No.
rehab for her. That's what this is.
How much would
There's the
you
face.
pay me? I
There's
won't
the
hold
face.
it.
Will you touch it?
I'll touch it.
Will you
it.
touch it?
Don't
You will have
not.
my eternal admiration.
Watch this, I'm slowly moving in.
Just a little touch. Just a little touch.
I don't know if I
I'll shield
can.
his eyes. I'll shield his eyes.
Oh, I can't.
Yeah, a little touch.
Oh, freak me out.
See?
See? We're rehabilitating Karen.
Yes, absolutely.
I need way more help than you can give me with the snake. That is a
All right.
really
Practice.
freaky feeling.
Yeah, it's weird because you feel it, you think it's going to be slimy, and you think what really gets interesting is either when he jumps a little bit or when he holds on tighter. It's not the best feeling, but you've assured me, Shawna, that
He's-
totally safe.
He's used to this.
Okay.
Of the animals that you bring to schools, what is the animal that gets the most attention?
Probably Bruce and Max.
Yeah.
those two.
There are superstars.
They're the stars.
Which is why we brought them today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. And you brought another friend
I did.
in a magic little box behind us. Tell us about. I haven't seen this one yet. I'm
Okay.
excited to
Did you
see.
feel like we're at a game show? What's behind door number 3?
Well, we'll see if he'll come out for us. I'm sure he will.
And now, as you're bringing this bird out, is there anything we need to know
Oh.
about startling it or
No sudden movements because he doesn't see very well. Avro, come.
he doesn't see well?
He doesn't see very well.
Okay.
You'll see why in just a minute. Step up. There we go. Good job.
Oh,
Good
wow.
job. All right. Very good.
So what? Wow! Wow!
Snake
Look at the
is
wind
ro-
off of
is
it.
going away.
What type of bird is this?
This is called the Swainson's hawk. This is a very common species in Manitoba, and
he's missing an eye.
His name is Avro. Yeah.
Avro.
Avro. He's missing an eye because he was hit by a car. So
And like somebody would have then brought him in, like
That's
the people who
right.
hit the car actually like take him in their
Well,
arms and.
it was
I
a
mean,
little-
I would not want to grab an injured hawk.
it was a little ironic. The phone call we received was actually a veterinarian who had been driving down the highway and found him injured. She realized he'd been hit by a car, and so she did surrender him to us. But she was also a little bit instrumental in taking care of him as well.
What's the wingspan on this guy?
Well, I can lift him up and show you. Watch out there, Corny.
Oh, okay.
Don't wanna, it's always fun until someone loses
Hey,
an eye.
if I had a dime for every time I've been slapped in the face by a hawk, I would now have
You'd
a
have
dime.
10 cents. Yeah.
You'd have 10 cents, you'd be poor.
Whoa.
So,
This is not
He's
coming
really
in.
so does Avro
Slowly.
still like eat live animals? Do you feed him?
He does
live
not eat live animals. Unfortunately, the one eye he does have left does not see very well. The inside part of it was damaged too. So he kind of sees an image that looks like broken glass. He can't focus on images and he has no depth perception. So he can't hunt.
Does he fly?
No, he would probably crash into the floor or the walls.
Does he try though? Like, do you
No,
have
he doesn't
to?
really try.
Okay.
He's got perches that are lower to the ground than our other birds, so he feels his way around with his feet.
How old is he?
He's going to be 5 this well, when did we say, Dan? Almost 5?
Approximately 5 years.
Approximately 5
And they
years
would
now.
live how long?
Well, we had a hawk in our care that lived to 33 at least. So he's got a long way to go yet.
So I'm sure when you go around to school, some kids are saying, I want to do what you do. How did you get into, like, how do you become someone who cares for such animals as this?
Well, you know, we have all different walks of life that work at our center, honestly. For myself, I did a degree in zoology.
Yeah.
And while I was finishing that, I started volunteering with the center. And so that's how I became involved with the birds. I'll let Dan tell you how he became involved.
Well, yeah, and it's like I mentioned earlier, the organization's primarily volunteer-based. We have 2 staff members, and the rest of us are volunteers, and which is very much the norm across North America for rehab centers. And a lot of our training is just we train volunteers as they come to our center, and there's symposiums and things that those of us that are very involved will go out and do training at other organizations where they put on symposiums for teaching us how to care for the wildlife. But it's as far as getting into the the business, so to say, as Shawna said, you get some animal science background and just plain experience working with animals is all, and we train the rest.
I have a question about Max. He almost pants like a dog, and you see his throat. What is he doing?
That's exactly what he's doing. He's normally kept outside, so he's a little warm right now. So he's thermal regulating like a
He's
dog.
having a hot flash.
Yeah.
Not that I would know.
You'll notice Avro doesn't do that. He's actually what we call a neotropical bird because he spends part of his year down in Brazil and Argentina. Normally this time of year he would have migrated down there. So, yeah, he's not at all hot in this room. He likes the temperature here.
He's kept in a heated room at the
Yeah.
center.
Yeah.
That's right.
Have you ever taken in an animal where you had to call in a specialist and go, we don't actually even know what to do with this animal?
For sure.
Well, what we do is we do a lot of the procedures at the center, the basic first aid, the rehabilitation, and things like that. Whenever there's more involved procedures such as x-ray surgeries, we work with a veterinarian clinic very closely, and they volunteer almost all their services to us.
One thing I'm curious about, these are not animals that would typically associate with humans. How do you acclimate them to human contact? Because they seem pretty comfortable being around people.
You have to spend a lot of time with them, and it also depends on the species. Avro has always been a very calm, laid-back bird, and he acclimated very quickly to being fed by hand with his injuries. A bird like Max, on the other hand, took several years of consistent handling before he became suitable for this type of work.
Yeah.
Great horned owls are naturally more aggressive, and Max is a male, so he's territorial. So he has to get used to somebody working with him before he'll be cooperative.
I think Bruce, I've become the snake whisperer. He's very calm. It's very calm. It's like my bracelet.
Bruce is almost like a piece of jewelry. You're accessorizing really well.
It does go well with your outfit, absolutely.
Thank you.
And further to that, with the patients that we get in, we want to have as little contact with them as possible because the intent is to put them back in the wild, and we don't want them to get accustomed to humans or us being involved in their life. We want to put them back in the wild the way they came.
Yeah. Well, this is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing these wonderful creatures with us, and we look forward to you bringing more sometime.
Sure,
That'd be
anytime.
fantastic.
And how do we get a hold of you if we suddenly come upon something?
You can find us online at wildlifehaven.ca, and we also have all of our information online anywhere you find it.
Great.
Excellent.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.